There's one of my favorite lines from the Dhammapada, somewhat paraphrased here, is sometimes people get criticized for talking too much, and then sometimes people get criticized for not talking enough. And then even when people talk just the right amount, sometimes people will get criticized for that. Everyone is criticized, which is just a good reflection on the reality of being a human being, and particularly living with other people. It's impossible, pretty much, to avoid any kind of criticism, whether it's well-intended or not so well-intended. It's just part of human interaction, it seems like, at times, whether it's skillfully done or not skillfully done. So it's a really good practice to just start to learn to see what goes on in the mind when somebody criticizes you. What is it that, how does the mind, oftentimes I think for most of us, it tends to close down and go into a bit of a defense mode. And if we're somewhat practiced, we can restrain our response so as not to just respond in a defensive kind of way, verbally. But still, there's oftentimes that internal defensiveness, that kind of protection walls that kind of rise up in some way or another. Oftentimes it's just in proliferative thinking, like, how dare they? Or that wasn't fair, that wasn't right, or just kind of stuffing it and walking away and letting it stew, and seeing how it affects our behavior, particularly in regard to the person who criticized us. How often we can just kind of shut down around that person if we feel like it was unjustified, and how that can be carried on for hours, days, weeks, months, sometimes years. That kind of impression can result in that, even if it's subtle, that kind of subtle shutting down around a particular person, and how we kind of maybe disregard them a little more, or don't attend to them, or change our behavior, and at the worst, sometimes just ignore them altogether, kind of shun them. And as a defense of self-protection, to protect ourselves from another perceived pain. So to notice that, even whether on a gross level or a very subtle level, how we change our behavior sometimes around people who criticize us, and how holding that kind of defensive posture, even on a very subtle level, that's painful and dukkha, painful and suffering in itself. That kind of walled-off feeling to another person or another group of people. So to just be aware of that tendency and work towards not excluding anything or anybody from our experience. It doesn't mean we have to condone it or agree with it, or sometimes not deal with it in some way or another, hopefully as skillfully as possible, but not to let it shut us down to the point of shunning other people or excluding other people or shutting out other people. And there's all sorts of ways that we can try to include other people in our behavior, our speech, and attending to people when they're talking to you, to increase that sense of inclusion rather than perfunctoriness, not regarding other people as functions or roles, but as actual human beings, to open ourselves up to the humanity of the people that we live with, whether skillful things are always happening or unskillful things happen sometimes, to just be able to open and attend to and not diss other people, not ignore other people, not categorize other people according to roles, responsibilities, functions, how we can get something from them that we need. But to, when somebody comes up to you, even if it's somebody you've had some difficulties with and has a question or an issue or a problem or just a minor kind of request, to turn around and give them full attention. If hopefully it'll be the right time, and we have to be sensitive when we approach other people. as well, to make sure it's the right time. But to give people full attention, even if they've hurt us in the past, just give that time and space to somebody, even if it's just for a brief minute or two. And then not to get lost in extended feelings of hurt and holding grudges. I remember when the community here was getting a fair amount of criticism over some issues some years ago. And we're kind of getting bombarded with some pretty negative feedback, which I think, had some justification in reality, but mostly was ill-informed kind of criticism. And sometimes it would get pretty hot and heavy and heated. And the go-to recollection that I had was something that I had heard Ajahn Sucitto say in a talk. And he was talking about metta and holding that space of kindness. And his phrase was, don't let anyone hijack your metta from you. So we can try and keep that in mind. It's just like no matter what happens, no matter who comes at you with justified or unjustified criticisms, don't let anybody hijack your kindness. Try to, even if you have the momentary reaction of defensiveness or aversion, try to at least return at some point when the emotions have settled down to a space of kindness and spaciousness, even if it's a fairly egregious behavior on the other person's part, to just realize that we've been there too, and to have that kind of sense of kindness and spaciousness around it as the issue gets hopefully worked through at some point, but not to move into that kind of constricted state of mind that can so often happen, but to gradually relax, open up, and not let anybody hijack that ability to be spacious and kind in any circumstance. So for a morning reflection.